Hello.
Hey, Luis. How are you? All right. Hey, Mama Bear.
Hey.
Oh, we're good.
All right. Yeah, I've been messing with my computer, and then my
Mom.
my docking station. All right. So, yeah, I finally got in. So today I'm just gonna go right into it. We're gonna do a film which I absolutely think everyone should watch. It's kind of I'll just tell you that it's not HD. It's pretty dated, but the quality of the content is really good. So I'm just gonna show the film, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Just gonna go right into it. Okay, so screen share. Wait, let me pop it up first. All right. Okay, share. All right, it's about an hour, 10 minutes, so give us plenty of time to talk.
Behind this arch, the beginning of California's modern civilization is written in massive walls and rudimentary, though genial factories.
So reads this inscription on the wall of Mission San Gabriel.
Inside, you will breathe an atmosphere of many years, echo-inspiring psalmody of the church, fragrant and comforting with virtues and heroism of the friars who brought the blessing of Christianity to pagan Indians and to us.
Reverend Francis J. Weber, an authority on California missions, would write,
It is Junipero Serra, the gray-robed friar, to whom California owes everlasting tribute. From the silver strand of San Diego to the Golden Gate on San Francisco Bay, this torchbearer of civilization inaugurated a movement whereby the natives of the forest and plains were able to turn their faces from the darkness of heathenism to the celestial light of Christianity and immortality.
Throughout California, from mission to mission and town to town, one motif of the missions is seen again and again, a kind Spanish padre comforting a poor Indian child. This view of the California missions has made its way into the community. Visitors to Mission San Luis Rey are given a brochure that reads,
The Franciscan padres and Spaniards sought to save the natives. Within a short time, under such help, the Indians progressed from a state of barbarism to a relatively high level of civilization.
Above an archway at Mission Santa Barbara,
We can't hear the audio when you mute.
I can't hear the audio. Ethan, are you there? There's no audio, Ethan, for anybody, or for a lot of people.
This decline in the Indian population that would occur during the mission period,
It's
the
back.
missionaries believed from the start that they were helping the Indians. In order to understand how the lives of the California Indian people were to be changed by the mission, let us take a short look at the individuals who have been living in California for thousands of years. Before the Spanish came, there were estimated between 125,000 and 400,000 native people in California, making it one of the most densely populated areas in North America. Around 64,000 people were in the tribes that would be involved with the mission. The people who would be affected by the missions essentially came from 6 different language groups. The humans from the San Diego area, the Shoshoneans from the Oceanside area through Los Angeles and the San Fernando Valley, the Chumash from Malibu to San Luis Obispo, the Salinans and Esselens from San Luis Obispo to Big Sur, and the Costanoans north to San Francisco. Later, each tribe would be named for the mission which they lived near, acquiring names like Diegueño, Gabrieleño, Fernandeño, or Ventureño. No matter which language group they were from, the Indians of Southern California tended to group themselves in small bands and villages, with each person working for the benefit of everyone in the band. The land of Southern California provided these people with all they needed, so they had no need to grow crops agriculturally, as did the people of Arizona and New Mexico. For this reason, these people were called hunter-gatherers. According to many anthropologists, hunter-gatherers enjoy the highest standard of living because they have the widest variety of staple foods and the most leisure time. Staple foods come from whatever is in season. The reason for the large amount of leisure time is rather simple. People in an agricultural or industrial society have to go to work for the day and then come home to take care of the house, prepare dinner, and all the rest. Hunter-gatherers have the whole day to supply themselves with their necessities, so their day is less structured than ours. It was very time-consuming to work on household articles, such as these Luiseño baskets. Shown here are Chumash steatite effigies, abalone fishhooks, and olive shell necklace. Songs, dances, and ceremonies play an important role in these societies, as religion was woven into the fabric of everyday life. The Chumash, who lived from Malibu to San Luis Obispo, are noted for their rock art and their knowledge of astronomy. Both the Gabrieleños from Los Angeles area and the Chumash built large plank canoes, which carried them to various coastal villages and to the Channel Islands. Most of the early explorers noted the friendly and proud disposition of these people. Writes Father Francisco Palou.
At one of the islands of the Santa Barbara Channel, which is populated with heathen, our ship took on water. As soon as the launch approached, the natives from the village near the beach came up and welcomed us with demonstrations of great joy, making us presents of fish, which they had in great abundance. In the night, it was remembered that we had forgotten our staff and cross at the village. We immediately gave it up for lost, as it was known how the Indians coveted this matter. But they were so honest that at daybreak, it was discovered that one of the little canoes was coming to the ship, and that in his hand, one of the heathen was carrying the staff of the Holy Cross.
So things were for the California Indians until July 16, 1769, when the founding of Mission San Diego would initiate the mission system in Alta California. Writes Father Palou.
We raised the standard of the Holy Cross in order to subject the barbarity of the heathen to the gentle yoke of our holy faith.
As the missionaries, accompanied by Spanish soldiers, traveled up the coast, many native people thought them to be gods. However, after seeing a Spanish soldier level his musket at a bird and shoot it, they decided that it was impossible for the giver of life to kill animals. Thus, the Spanish came to be known as the human beings of nasty white color and ugly blue eyes. The missionaries had developed a model method of recruiting Indians for the missions. Writes Father Palou, mission historian.
On the day following the founding of the mission, 12 heathen came up. The Reverend Father President Serra and the soldiers made them gifts to attract them to the mission, and through the interpreter, told them that the Father called Miguel would stay there, and that they and their heathen friends should visit him.
Trade beads, cloth, or ribbons were often given to Indians as an inducement to conversion. A new convert was taught to say the words, Amor a Dios, and shortly afterward, a priest would pour water from a baptismal shell onto that person's head. Once an Indian had converted in this manner, the Padres felt that they had parental control over that person for the rest of his or her life. The great-great-grandfather of this Kumeyaay woman was in Mission San Diego.
And the innocent, they didn't know what it was and were pouring on their head. I asked them, did you know what they were doing? And this old man said none of them knew why they were dumping water on their head, because none of them could understand it.
Efforts at voluntary conversion did not always meet with success, writes the frustrated Father Palou of the first year at Mission San Diego.
We endeavored to attract the heathen with gifts and endearments, but as they did not understand the language, they paid no attention to anything. In 6 months, the mission had not reduced or baptized a single heathen, for although the fathers did everything possible to convert them, and they induced the parents of a little girl to give their consent for her baptism, when Father Serra was about to pour holy water on her, the heathen snatched her away and ran off with her.
Because the missions were having so much trouble recruiting Indians, we must ask whether the Padres resorted to compulsion and forced the people to convert. Father Temple at Mission Santa Barbara had this to say about mission recruitment.
I think from the Indians' point of view, well, the mission system was something they could join or they could not join at their choice. There is no documentation to prove that Indians were ever forced into the mission system. The mission system was such that an Indian could come in or he could remain out. It was left to the volition of each one.
However, Kumeyaay people in San Diego County tell a different story.
My great-great-grandfather, he told me that's what they done. You know, they captured them and beat them and took them down there. A lot of them, and how they killed them. If they didn't go, you know, willingly, they killed them. A lot of them never came back.
The majority of them were captured, and then they give them a choice whether they want to be a slave, they want to be dead, or they want to be a part of the system.
Hugo Reed, a Scotch rancher and signer of the original California state constitution, talked to many Gabrieleños shortly after the mission closed. He would write,
On one occasion, they went as far as the present Rancho del Chino, where they tied and whipped every man, woman, and child in the lodge and drove part of them back with them. On the road, they did the same with those of the lodge at San Jose. On arriving home, they instructed the men to throw their bows and arrows at the feet of the priests and make due submission. The infants were then baptized, as were also all children under age 8. The former were left with their mothers, but the latter kept apart from all communication with their parents. The consequence was, first, the women consented to the rite and received it for the love they bore their offspring, and finally, the males gave way for the purpose of enjoying once more the society of wife and family. Marriage was then performed.
according to these Luiseno people from the Palma Valley Indian Reservation.
Well, there's always some that were easy to come into things like that because, see, when they brought the Spanish over here, they brought a lot of their goodies and all these kinds of things to live. And these Indians who, so to speak, like to hang around the fort guys, you know. Well, there's always some around there. And they'd entice their people to come in, but they were, you know, they were getting in before they knew it. Before they were realized it, they were in. And then the priests turned around and had true colors of how they wanted to treat the Indians. But boy, they had gimmicks to get them in. You know, there's a lot of our people, though, they like to live in the natural way, hunting and, you know, doing these kinds of things. But somebody's got, you know, enticed by the good things, you know, the easy things. Oh, yeah, they had to hang around, you know, to come in first.
Were there people who said, no, I won't go? And what became of them?
Oh, they strapped them. They used straps on our people. And especially the older men, remember getting hit with those straps and belted. So it's really been something that's been very common and very cruel to them.
In 1825, F.W. Beechey, a British explorer, visited the missions in the vicinity of San Francisco and Monterey.
Some of the converted Indians are occasionally stationed in places which are resorted to by wild tribes for the purpose of offering them flattering accounts of the advantages of the mission and of persuading them to abandon their barbarous life, while others obtain leave to go into the territory of the Gentiles to visit their friends and are expected to bring back converts with them when they return. On these occasions, a boat is furnished with cannon and musketry, in every way equipped for war, with the idea of ingratiating themselves to their masters and of receiving a reward. The neophytes and gentle de raison or whites who accompany them avail themselves of their superiority. In this way, and through acts of aggression, converts are furnished. Women and children are generally the first objects of capture, as their husbands and parents sometimes voluntarily follow them into captivity. In a few days, a willing Indian suffers himself to be baptized and duly initiated into the church. If, however, as it not too infrequently happens, any of the captured Indians shows a repugnance to conversion, it is the practice to imprison them for a few days and then allow them to breathe a little fresh air in a walk around the mission to observe the happy mode of life of their converted countrymen, after which they are again shut up and thus continue to be incarcerated until they declare their readiness to renounce the religion of their forefathers.
Lieutenant George Peard of Beechey's expedition would write,
Heavy irons, starvation, and other coercive measures with persuasion make the prisoners ready in a fortnight or 10 days to receive baptism.
when people were baptized, their original names were taken away and replaced with Spanish names. One entry from the baptismal record of Mission San Diego, for example, reads,
In the said church, Father Luis Jaume baptized Juanich, an adult of about 22 years. He was given the name Francisco.
According to a Chumash man living on the Santa Ynez Reservation,
how would you respond if somebody told you to change your name from what you was called to another name? For no apparent no reason except that probably if you were ordered to, you didn't have no choice. So probably the English, they were told to pick a name for themselves. When you get baptized, they give you a name. So even if the English were old or young, they were baptized and they were told they had to have another name. So the English, I don't believe they wanted any part of that name giving. Maybe they wanted a name that would still say they're part of Mother Earth. So they probably got together and they got names that had some connection with the sky or the earth. You have people by the name of Robles. Robles is the oak tree, which is strong and it has a very beautiful significance for Indian people that they use the term, may you be as tall as and strong as the oak tree. So the oak tree was Mother Earth's child. So English took that name because it was a strong name. There's the name of Pina. Pina means pine nuts. And that was one of the staple foods of the Chumash, where seasonal they go up to the mountain to a certain area where there was very choiceful pinas. And they'd go down, grab the supply, come down, and now when the name was given, they probably, to honor that name, they put the name of Pina. We also have the name of Romero. There was some Spanish people by the name of Romero, but I doubt it very much that they took that name on account of that. There was a herb that the English thought highly of, which is the Romerillo plant. It was very good medicine. So you have Romero, and then you have the name of Miranda. And Miranda means, mira is look, anda, it means walk. So the Chumash people always used to tell people going on long journeys, especially children, they tell them, look before you walk. In case there's danger ahead, you look first and then you take the step. So that name has something to do with the culture of the Chumash.
once in the missions, Indian people were put to work, first in the construction of the missions and later in increasing their wealth. The rigid daily structure of mission life would be completely alien to the more relaxed seasonal work schedule of the California Indian. Wrote Father Palou,
The missionary fathers of the foremen and the neophytes are the workmen.
on March 21st, 1799, Captain Grajera would make this report to Governor Borjica from San Diego.
They begin their labors at 6 in the morning and work almost until sunset. Here at Mission San Diego, a certain excess of hours has been noted. The women work precisely as the men, but those in the advanced state of pregnancy, those nursing, and the old women are assigned to carrying wood, and the children are used to frighten away birds from the gardens and perform other light tasks.
George Heinrich Lansdorf, an early mission visitor, would write,
Women are required to grind corn between two flat stones by manual labor. Windmills and handmills are brought here but are not used because the priests did not want the Indians to be idle.
throughout the 6-day work week, a Spanish mayordomo was often employed as an overseer. Indian mayors, or alcaldes, were also used to keep the Indian laborers at work. According to Beachy,
Clothing of a better kind than worn by the Indians is given to the officers of the missions, both as a reward for their services and to create emulation in others.
Hugo Reed would write of the mission San Gabriel,
Indian alcaldes were appointed annually by the padre and chosen from among the very laziest of the community, he being of the opinion that they took more pleasure in making the others work than would industrious ones. From my own observation, this is correct. They carried a wand to denote their authority, and what was more terrible, an immense scourge of terrible rawhide, about 10 feet in length, plated to the thickness of a man's wrist. They did a great deal of chastisement, both by and without orders. One of them always acted as an overseer on work done in gangs.
Catherine Mojado, a Kumeyaay woman from Pala, remembers,
And my great-grandmother and my grandmother, they heard about the missions, but they used to say that the Indians, they make them work so hard bringing those logs down to build all these missions, and they really were very unkind to them, you know. Didn't treat them right like they should, just like slaves. I think she told me that she had a brother that went with some of these people that were working in the missions, and I guess he got killed, you know, building. I don't know how or what, but that's what she was saying. They used to have a lot of adobe walls all over there, you know, that's a lot of the Indians' work. My grandmother said one time that one of them had to clean the beans to cook, you know. He'd clean them real good, see that no little rocks were in it or not. And then when they cooked it, somebody was mean enough, they'd put rocks in it, and then he'd get whipped for it. After they found out. That's what she said, I don't know. I said, why, how could they do that? Well, they just done it so they could get punished.
this Chumash woman from Santiago's Indian Reservation recalls,
What I understood was that they used to beat them, hit them, so that they could work. Whatever they told them, they had to do it. They do it. They do it. I guess their belief was that if you believed in God, that God would punish you, that cross would punish them. If they help build the churches, the way I understood was that they just let them work and work, just kept whipping them and make them work and work, building the churches. They didn't care if tomorrow you weren't there, they didn't even miss you. They had so many, with so many Indians. They were so tired, they didn't care where they slept before when they built that church there. I feel that church was built by blood of the Indians. I said, why did I look up there and all those big, heavy things? How did they do it? How could they have done all that work like that? But they died, a lot of them, for it.
I also had a great uncle. He died here in 56 or 57. His father came back. They escaped. They never could keep the mountain people because they always managed to escape because they would not plow. They wouldn't do no work for them. So one of them came home, but he came home with a collar where he showed that he had pulled plows. And he had that, and then I wish now that I would have kept it and showed it to people, but we have a tradition that we cannot keep things that belongs to the dead, and it was burned. But I saw that with my own eye. Yes, it was a collar. It went around the neck, and it had little steel hooks in the back, where you can see where they must have tied the ropes on it, or whatever they put back there. They were put on the Indians to pull plows.
Well, in the early days, yeah, the majority of on my mother's side, they were from Julian, and we had an old fellow that used to carry pine logs to build a mission down here in San Diego. He was a little ruddy fellow, but he was a man that carried a good sized log. He didn't ask to go. He went there as a slave.
Whether they were spinning wool, weaving, making candles, or working in the fields, Indian laborers would never be paid for their work in the missions, writes mission scholar Dr. S.F. Cook.
Despite innumerable lamentations, apologies, and justifications, there can be no serious denial that the mission system in its economics was built on forced labor.
According to this man from the Santa Ynez Reservation,
They were prisoners. They were slaves. That's on my mother's side of the family. My great-grandfather helped bring the logs down from Palmer Mountain down to the Paula Mission, and a lot of the local people from that area helped build that mission. Well, they were very much against it because of the fact, if you're browbeaten to go into something, I never did go in there thinking about that, looking at those beads and thinking about it. Unless it's brought to me like you're talking about it, there is that feeling, we have those feelings because they were our people. But it's to say, at that time, I'm sure they didn't like it, because nobody would like something when you're made to do something you don't want to do, or made and not get nothing for it, and get beaten because you weren't doing it right or didn't work hard enough, or whatever the reason may be. I'm sure there was a lot of ill feelings and everything against the priest.
I do not think that the amount of work that was expected of the Indians was oppressive. Because in the morning, they were gathered here in this courtyard by the mayordomo, and they were assigned their tasks. They were given a certain allotment of work to do. If they went to it, they could finish it by noon.
Do you think they should have been paid?
Well, I really don't think that would have been a very strong requirement, because actually they were supported at the mission. I mean, they received their sustenance. I think some of the very favorable things that were offered to the Indians were that they were instructed in trades, that they became very good craftsmen. They were taught some 52 trades, not every Indian, of course, that number. In this courtyard here at the Mission of Santa Barbara, these were all shops about here. So there was the weaving room, and there was the tannery a little farther out, and there was the carpenter shop, and there was the blacksmith shop, there was the leatherworking room, there was the sewing room. This was a very busy place.
We read Father Temple's statement to several Indian people.
They had to make their ropes and stuff like this. They had to make their all their clothing out of leather. They had to learn to tan that only long before the missionaries ever came. Yeah. As far as the corn, we were the one that taught them how to eat it. That's kind of ridiculous.
The Indians already knew how to survive, take care of themselves already. I don't think they teach them any blacksmith that I know. No way. Not that I heard of. For civilization to learn, they killed them. You mean they killed them? That's a lie.
I wouldn't know what the hell, what type of trade they did teach. Well, I don't think it helped the Indian one bit. It might have helped the white people that come in here. Because the Indian, well, he had his own knowledge and he had his own way.
The mission system did in fact profit substantially from Indian labor. On his visit in 1826, Beachy would note,
A merchant at Monterey paid $36,000 in 1 year to a mission, which was not one of the largest for its hide, tallow, and Indian labor. The produce of the land and of the labor of the Indians is appropriated to the support of the mission and the overplus to amass a fund which is entirely at the disposal of the padres. In some of the establishments, this must be very large, although the padres will not admit it, and always plead poverty.
in the words of this Chumash woman on the Santa Ynez Reservation,
they were taken in with one idea, but it was turned all the way around. That they were beaten and forced to make them nations, and the priests got all the glory, and the Indians
You see how we live, where we live. Now it's nothing but a hole.
Indian workers could be hired out to the presidios at 1.5 reales per day. However, by the year 1790, after numerous complaints that the Indians were not being paid, all attempts to pay Indians for their work, whether inside or outside the mission, were abandoned. As soon as Spanish settlers moved into California, they began to take advantage of the free Indian labor supplied by the missions.
I was attending Juan Arianas, who was a descendant of one of the Spanish families. Juan Arianas came just after the close of the mission days. And I remember questioning him again and again and coming to the point that if you had a job to do, or you needed a craftsman, whom would you get? And he finally said we would get an Indian.
They used to work them hard. I remember my mother telling me how they used to work way up in El Sal. There were a lot of Indians there, and her mother used to go to El Sal and work with this old lady because he found her a job, and that Mexican Spaniard lady, they never paid her.
In 1813, Father Orbes of Mission Santa Barbara would write of the Spanish settlers,
The people of this province, known as the gente de razón, are so lazy and indolent that they know nothing more than to ride horseback. Labor of any kind they regard as dishonorable. They are of the opinion that only Indians ought to work. Wherefore they solicit the services of the Indians for even the most necessary things for their maintenance, such as cooking, washing, doing garden work, or taking care of babies.
the missionized Indians would be only the first in a long series of peoples that would occupy the role as the exploited labor source of California. They would be succeeded by Chinese, Japanese, and Filipino peoples throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s, who during this time period would not be permitted to bring their wives with them to California. During the 1930s and 40s, refugees from the Dust Bowls of Oklahoma, Texas, and Arkansas would play the same role. In mission times as today, California was famous for its bountiful harvest and abundant fields, grown, of course, by Indian labor. Writes Father Pedro Font, diarist for the De Anza expedition upon his arrival at Mission San Gabriel.
On our coming, they killed 3 or 4 sheep that they had, whose meat was particularly good, and I do not remember having eaten mutton whose meat was more fat and tender. All of us loved Mission San Gabriel for its fat cows that give much rich milk, from which is made cheese and very good butter. As Father Paterna says, it is like the promised land.
On this note, we come to ask, what were the Indians fed in the missions? How did the mission diet differ from the native food supply? And how would this change affect the Indian people? In pre-Hispanic times, the California Indians had adapted themselves to the native food supply. A difficult preparation, for example, involving seasonal gathering, storing, crushing, grinding, leaching, and cooking was needed for their main staple food, acorns. Seafood, acorns, pine, and other nuts, edible roots, grass seeds, bulbs, berries, deer and rabbit meat, all played a major role in the Indian diet. This picture shows manzanita berries, which, made into a tea or lemonade-type drink, were available only in the fall. The mission diet, both in quality, quantity, and dependability, would differ greatly from the native food supply. Writes A.F. Coronel, a mission visitor,
Food was given 3 times a day. It consisted of beans, corn, or wheat cooked together, which is called pozole.
So that they give them sometimes that oatmeal or cornmeal or whatever it is, just make it into a big pot and just hand it over one by one to eat. They won't give them good food if they didn't do a good job, that they weren't happy with their job.
although meat was sometimes included with one meal, Indian people were not generally fed fresh fruit or vegetables. While the Padres always claimed to be doing the best with what they had, the Indian diet in the missions was often inadequate. In 1821, Father Prefect Payeras would write from Mission San Francisco Solano,
This mission can supply nothing because for the last 3 or 4 months, the Indians have had nothing to eat.
In 1820, Father Zalvidea would write from Mission San Juan Capistrano,
These unfortunate Indians lack fat, beans, and corn.
In 1826, Captain Argüello would write from San Francisco,
The soldiers and the Indians are all feeling starvation. May God intercede always.
And I think while there may have been times where people were not fed as much as they thought they could be fed, just as it is today, I think that generally they were very well provided for. I think there are many, many accounts of the manner in which they received food from the mission and also from their own native flocks. I do think that this was a great crying need.
When mission supplies were low, Indians were sometimes sent to find what they could in the hills, an act which was usually forbidden. As Beachy writes,
if it should happen that there is a scarcity of provisions, the Indians were sent off to the woods to provide for themselves.
sometimes, years ago, I remember them saying, like my mother-in-law, she said, when the children got so hungry, they would, the shaka plant, they used to pick that and boil it. And because it was very, very bitter. It was like little cabbages, I guess it would be. But it was very bitter. And they used to have to boil it and really strain it good or something to take the bitterness out of it so that the babies would have something to eat. When missionized Indians were released to fend for themselves in the vicinity of a mission, a problem resulted because thousands of cattle and sheep in each mission greatly depleted the native grasses and other foods. When Indian people hunted cattle as they had hunted deer and elk, they would be severely punished.
And they had all kinds of animals they brought in here, different kinds of animals they turned loose. And that went on.
What effect did these animals have on the food supply that people had?
Well, we had a lot of stuff until they brought in sheep and goats and different things, and then they start taking out all the good food that we had. Now, even today, I think we lost a lot of things. Because I go up in the mountains and we hunt for things, and a lot of things are missing. And I think it's because they just pull them out by the roots.
Just how often and in what ways were people permitted to look for native foods?
They kept in the mission, and they couldn't go anywhere to hunt for anything. And if they did go out to look for something, they had soldiers or guards, to go with them.
Even during normal periods, the adequacy of the mission diet was very questionable.
The missionaries ate good. I don't know how they labeled the Indian, but they weren't treated like anyone else. They were just not treated. They weren't just, half the time they weren't even treated like human beings.
Writes Beachy,
the only amusement which Padre Tomas, my hospitable host of Mission San Jose, indulged in during my visit to that place was during meal times, when he amused himself by throwing pancakes to the muchachas, a number of little Indian domesticos who stood gaping round the table. For this purpose, he had every day 2 piles of pancakes made of Indian corn. He would fix his eyes on one of the boys, who immediately opens his mouth, and the padre, rolling up a cake, would say something ludicrous in allusion to the boy's appetite, or to the size of his mouth, and pitch the cake at him, which the imp would catch between his teeth and devour with incredible rapidity, in order that he might be ready the sooner for another, as well as to please the padre, whose amusement consisted in a great measure in witnessing the sudden disappearance of the cake.
in 1798, Presidio commanders were asked to investigate the mission food situation. Captain Francisco Goycochea would write from Santa Barbara,
although sufficient to sustain life, the ration cannot suffice for he who works from morning till night.
Governor Borica would write to the Viceroy,
without being prompted by pity, but only out of common sense. I deem this food insufficient with which solely to maintain themselves and to resist the hardship to which they are subjected.
According to Dr. Cook, the average Indian in the missions received 1,405 calories per day. The U.S. Health Service today recommends 2,300 calories per day. Writes Dr. Cook,
One is apt to incline that the Indians, on the whole, lived continuously on the verge of clinical deficiency.
A lot of them starved because the food they were giving them there, they weren't used to it, and they were dying. A lot of them died from starvation. And
Dr. Cook would find that while the missions produced more food per person than did the presidios or pueblos, the Indians were given far less to eat in the missions than were the white people in the presidios and pueblos. Much of the food produced in the missions went to supply the presidios and pueblos, often leaving the Indians without enough to eat. In San Francisco, Beachy would write,
The plain upon which the Presidio stands is well adapted to cultivation, but it is scarcely ever touched by the plow, as the garrison is entirely beholden to the mission for its resources.
Father Lopez of Carmel Mission would write,
The Indians are complaining that they are working so that the soldiers may eat.
the missionized Indians would face a drastic change in housing, a change which, while increasing their susceptibility to disease, would also represent the move to the incarcerated life. In pre-Hispanic times, the wickiup would be the main housing for the California Indians. Larger community houses, such as the one shown here, were used by the Gabrielenos and the Chumash. Wickiups would be burned for sanitation. The missionaries assumed that the European-style housing would be better for the Indians. Writes Father Engelhardt, mission historian,
The Indians, we can imagine, must have felt like lords in their neat and spacious homes, which were so much more attractive than their filthy huts they had inhabited as pagans.
We must ask, however, which housing was better adapted to the California environment? Not only were the wickiups more sanitary than the adobe buildings, but in earthquake-prone California they were safer. An earthquake probably would not knock down a wickiup. But even if it did, the tulias and brush which fell from the ceiling could not hurt a person badly. In a brick mission, however, an earthquake could often prove disastrous. Wrote Father Seignon, mission president in 1813,
These quakes will form an epoch in history for their destructiveness. The churches of Santa Barbara and San Fernando must be built anew, while at La Purísima, the quake was so violent that the bells gave way from their chimes. At San Juan Capistrano, California's most famous temple was ruined, and 40 neophytes were killed. Had the catastrophe occurred at high mass, and not when it did at early mass, scarcely a neophyte would be left. As it was, only 6 escaped.
in the missions, unmarried men and women would be locked up separately in adobe buildings called monjerios for women and barracks for men. The windows were very high and small so as to prevent people from escaping, and thus they afforded very poor ventilation. Writes Beachy,
The children and adults of both sexes are carefully locked up every night in separate apartments, and the keys are delivered into the possession of the padre.
in the monjerios and barracks, as many people as possible were locked into a 17 by 7 yard building with a latrine in the middle. Otto von Kotzebue, a Russian explorer who visited the missions in 1816, would write,
The overcrowded barracks, without windows or beds, rather resemble cow stalls than habitation for men. The uncleanliness of these barracks baffles description, and is perhaps the cause of the great mortality.
On one of the many investigations of the mission conditions, Governor Borica would personally inspect some empty monjerios. He would write,
So pestiferous were they that I could not endure them for even a minute.
Mission visitors, however, were given quarters such as this room at the Mission La Purísima. Married Indians were sometimes permitted to live in wickiups outside the mission. Most, however, were encouraged or required to live in adobe houses in an enclosure which, surrounded by an 8-foot wall, was locked each night.
9-foot fences, where they kept the women on one and the men on the other, and they were not allowed to leave.
They built some of those things and made them stay there, but they had guards all around it. But I don't think so. I think they had them penned up more in one spot, to keep their eyes on them. But I think there was few buildings.
Which did they like better, the adobe buildings in the missions or the...
They didn't like no building they had down there. If they liked it, they would have been down there. No, they liked their own house they built. They put different kind of tule. We call them tule. They grow right in the meadow here. They put that on the top, and they put mud on the top so the rain won't come through.
Missions were usually located on the foggy coastal plains, causing another problem for the missionized Indians. Even on a warm day, if we walk into an adobe building, we will immediately feel cold. The same applied to the Indians, who, locked inside the thick adobe walls, were subject to many respiratory ailments, such as tuberculosis and rheumatism. In 1796, Governor Borica would write,
The flu spreads from one to another in the villages and the buildings where the unmarried men and women sleep.
Before the Spanish came, villages would often be located near streams which would supply them with water. The missionaries are credited with bringing water systems, such as this washing and drinking pond at Mission La Purísima. However, despite the fact that the missionaries tried to be as sanitary as possible, the water supply came from the same place that the sewage was dumped. Dr. Cook writes,
A more perfect arrangement for the spread of gastrointestinal disorders could scarcely be devised.
overcrowding, improper nutrition, poor sanitation, poor ventilation, and demoralization all contributed to the Indians dying of diseases in the missions. To make matters worse, the California Indians had never before been exposed to European diseases such as smallpox, tuberculosis, measles, syphilis, cholera, and alcoholism, and thus had no immunity. In pre-Hispanic times, disease of any kind was virtually unknown to the California Indians. In the missions, however, people often died so fast that, as shown by the ditto marks on this translated burial record, their names were not even recorded. According to this record kept by the Padres, 32 people were buried at San Diego Mission in one day. Wrote Father Palou,
We succeeded in sending a great number of children to heaven who died almost as soon as they were baptized.
Governor Fajes, an earlier governor, would write,
Many and frequent are the deaths among the neophytes.
the average lifespan in the missions has been estimated at 6 years. Writes Lieutenant George Peard, who visited the missions with Beachy.
For some cause or another which I have not been able to discover, a great mortality to which the children are particularly subject takes place amongst the Indians in the missions.
Syphilis was introduced by the Spanish soldiers and would have a devastating effect on the Indian population, wrote Father Esteban Tapes from the mission Santa Barbara.
They are permeated to the marrow with venereal disease, as is shown by the newly born. 3/4 of the infants die in their first or second year, and of the other quarter which survives, most fail to reach age 25.
At Mission La Purísima, 9 out of the 10 infants were stillborn. Father Pelleras would write,
The majority of the pregnant women have produced stillborn babies.
Father Señor would write from Mission San Francisco.
The births scarcely correspond to the deaths, even in years when there is no epidemic. But in a year like 1806, when there was a simple epidemic of measles, more than 300 have died, and only 23 have been born.
Our people never had no tuberculosis or any kind of sickness because my people lived out in the open, you know, in the fresh air, and they lived on vegetables, you know, and wildlife, you know, meat, deer, rabbits, and you name it, quail. They never had no sickness until some of these people came over here. I can remember the story about just where I live here up above High Pass. A whole army came through there one time, and the next thing you know, everybody died with some kind of sickness. It was called smallpox. It just wiped the whole village out, and that happened just up about 6 miles from here. And the village, the site is still there yet. And we have never bothered that because we're always thinking about maybe the sickness is still there.
In the missions, the Indians would be treated by priests who knew little or nothing about medicine. Writes a member of Kotzebue's expedition.
There is no medical assistance here except bleeding, which is said to have been taught by a ship's surgeon. And this remedy being applied on every occasion is more fatal than advantageous.
Wrote a priest from Santa Barbara in 1818.
The fathers are realizing that the Indians are rapidly disappearing, and they have taken the most energetic measures to halt the spread of the evil. In spite of all this, it is observed with grief that the results are not commensurate with expectations.
With people dying left and right, the frustrated Padres often buried the bodies wherever they could. Alfred Robinson visited Mission Santa Barbara and wrote,
In one corner of the cemetery was the charnel house, crowded with a ghastly array of skulls and bones.
Archaeologists have found huge pits filled with bones. This is the Indian graveyard of Mission San Juan Capistrano. In 1817, the mission president wrote,
Their population is alarmingly decreasing. without there being any recognizable pest or epidemic apart from the regular diseases, which are always present.
By the time the missions closed in 1834, 29,100 Indians had been born, while 62,600 had died in the missions. A devastating population decline. The suggestion is sometimes made that the Indians would have died of introduced European diseases, regardless of whether or not they were in the missions. However, mission visitors would often note that the unconverted Indians did not have the sickly disposition of those in the missions. Furthermore, the peoples of the non-missionized areas, such as the Kumeyaay, the Pomo, Chemehuevi, have survived in far greater numbers than the missionized Indians. Mission Indians never had good nutrition, not with the way they. That's why we lost so many. So only a few Indians left here now. It's sad to see those Indians die that way. To see my people die that way. Building that Seminarist church. I wonder how many other ones died.
When you take them down there and put them in with different people that came somewhere and penned up in one dirty place, of course they got sick, and that's where the disease comes up.
When the Franciscan missionaries came to California, they believed strongly that the Indian people would go to hell if they did not abandon their own religion and accept Christianity. They looked upon people in this way. Unconverted Indians were referred to as bestias, or beasts, or Gentiles. Converted Indians were neophytes, or new converts. Those living the Spanish way of life, however, were referred to as gente de razón, or people of reason. The Padres hoped that in due time, when the Indians had completely abandoned their own culture and religion and replaced it with Christianity, that they too would become gente de razón, playing the role as serfs in the Spanish feudal system. The missionaries paid little respect to the Indian way of life. Writes Kotzebue,
none of them appear to have troubled themselves about the Indian history, customs, religions, or languages. They are irrational savages, and nothing more can be said. Who would trouble himself with their stupidity? Who would spend his time upon it?
Wrote Father Lasuen, second president of the missions.
They are a people without education, without government, without religion, and without shame.
They thought they were doing right by giving the Indians Christianity. But yet they didn't take time to listen to the Indian, and ask them, what do you believe in? What is your beliefs? Instead, they enforced themselves on us because they thought we were a bunch of dummies, but really we weren't.
According to this Chumash woman,
the intentions of the Padres were good, and simply because there was no understanding of the lifestyle of the Indian and their lifestyle. They wanted to make something good out of the Indian, but without knowing that the Indian was already good.
The California Indians took steam baths in sweat houses, both for cleanliness and for spiritual purification. During the mission era, however, Europeans believed bathing to be unhealthy. For this reason, and because they feared the Indian religion, the sweat house, or temescal, was rigidly suppressed. In spite of this, the Indians persisted in the practice and were eventually permitted to use the sweat house. This Costanan woman is dressed typically for peoples in California. Although in warm weather, many wore little or nothing. This fact in particular shocked Father Serra, who would write,
They were entirely naked, yet not for one moment could one notice the least sign of shame for their lack of dress.
Once in the missions, people were immediately required to wear thick, heavy, crude woolen clothes, even while working in the hot sun. Virtually all the Indian people in the missions became plagued with rashes, skin diseases, and the itch. More difficult than altering physical appearance, however, the Padres were trying to completely change the Indians' way of thinking to fit a European model. Father Serra carried with him a chain with which he would constantly beat himself before Indian congregations. Writes his friend and colleague, Father Palou,
He beat himself so unmercifully that the whole audience shuddered and wept.
On various occasions, Father Serra, standing in the pulpit and clutching a crucifix, would pound his chest with a heavy stone or burn a candle with 4 wicks against his bare breast. Writes Beachy,
In each mission church are always provided representations of hell and paradise.
the former exhibiting in the most disgusting manner all the torments the imagination can fancy, for the purpose of striking terror into the Indians, who look upon the performance with fear and trembling.
The religion of the native Californians was not based on the concept of good and evil. Their gods, such as coyote, horned owl with a sun, represented different forces of nature rather than good and bad. Likewise, the land and everything on it was owned by all, a principle which greatly conflicted with the European ideas of private property. Few padres learned the Indian language, so most sermons were conducted in Spanish or Latin. Beachy would write,
It is greatly regretted that the padres do not make themselves acquainted with the Indian language. Many of the Indians surpass their pastors in this respect and can speak Spanish, while scarcely one of the padres can make himself understood by the Indians.
I was taught to go to church, that I had to learn certain prayers, but I really wasn't taught what was the Father talking about. What was he saying? Why was he talking a strange language that I didn't understand? Why did I have to kneel and bow and sit down or get up and say the prayers that they tell me to do? They talk to fear. A lot of them never went to church. And they were forced to, they were whipped.
They considered us as savages, so they had to teach us. We had nothing. They just figured we lived like, I should say, animals. But yet they didn't stop to think that we had our own beliefs and our own culture and everything. Yet we had that. And everything we had was always good for the people, even to the animal. Anything was living, anything on this earth there was a meaningful reason they were here. And to them, they could never see that. Anything that was something like that we believe in nature, they just didn't think it was normal, I guess. And so to them, we were considered pagans. So they had to browbeat their religion into us.
Alfred Robinson, an American, would visit Mission San Luis Rey in 1829 and write,
Mass is offered daily. The greater part of the Indians attend, but it's not unusual to see numbers of them driven along by the alcaldes and, under the whip's lash, forced to the very doors of the sanctuary.
Beachy attended Mass at Mission San Francisco.
After the bell had tolled, several alguacils went around to the huts to see if all the Indians were at church, and if any were found loitering, they exercised with tolerable freedom a long lash with a broad thong at the end of it, a discipline which appeared the more tyrannical as the church did not have room for everyone, and several had to sit upon the steps outside. The congregation was arranged on both sides of the building, separated by a wide aisle in the center, in which were stationed several alguacils with whips, canes, and goads to preserve silence, to maintain order, and keep the congregation in the kneeling posture. The goads were better adapted to this purpose than the whips, as they could reach a long way and inject a sharp puncture without making any noise. The end of the church was occupied by a guard of soldiers under arms with fixed bayonets.
I think one of the things that the Indians learned very well here, and it contributed greatly to their development, was the learning of the European style of music, or the traditional style of music.
A member of the Kotzebue expedition would hear mission music played during Mass.
The noise of the drums, tabors, and other instruments is the only way of producing an effect on the Indians. When the drums begin to beat, they fall to the ground as if they were half dead. None dares to move. All remain stretched upon the ground without making the slightest movement until the end of the service. And even then it is necessary to tell them several times that Mass is finished.
As vigorously as the Padres pushed Catholicism, they suppressed the Indian religion, which they associated with the devil. In 1829, for example, 3 neophytes were charged with sorcery. The accusation went as follows.
They were found dancing in one of the houses, and to the house bringing those most dangerously ill. They told each of the sick who had been dancing to contribute glass beads, in order that by this dance they were making to the devil, they should become cured of the illness.
Hugo Reed described the following treatment of Indian religious leaders who were called wizards.
Wizards were kept chained together and well flogged. There were no small number of men rejoicing in the fame of witchcraft, so fathers over there made sawyers of them, keeping them like hounds in couples, so they worked two above and two below in the pit.
Why couldn't the Indians practice their own religion in the missions?
If they were brought into the mission system, and then this was an indication on their part they were going to enter the Christian religion.
With their own religion suppressed, how did the Indian people view Christianity? Hugo Reed would write,
Baptism was called soina, or being bathed, and was looked upon as ignominious and degrading. Their religion as Catholics consisted of being able to cross themselves under an impression that it was something connected with hard work and still harder blows. The life and death of Jesus is, in their opinion, only a distorted view of their own life. Hell has no terror.
as serious as being physically weakened, many people in the missions were left with severe mental depression. Even material elements of their culture, such as boats or baskets, fell into disuse. As a member of the Kotzebue expedition writes,
The Indian, for the most part, forgets his industry in the missions.
Deprived of their own culture, and yet not understanding that of the Spanish, the condition of the Indians in the missions was described by many as miserable. Writes a member of the Kotzebue expedition,
They do not like the life of the mission. I have never seen one laugh. I have never seen one look one in the face. After several months in the missions, they usually begin to grow fretful and thin, and they constantly gaze with sadness at the mountains which they can see in the distance.
I have a great uncle that said when he was little, when he was playing and came in the house, that his parents would talk Shumash so the kids wouldn't understand them. And they were actually told not to talk Shumash. They weren't taught Shumash. It was forbidden for the children to speak Shumash. We don't know our culture because the Spaniards took it away from us when they enforced their culture on us to eat and to speak and even to have their same faith. So this is why the Shumash don't have hardly anything now. I ask myself, why aren't we as strong as the Navajos and the Shoshones and the Indians in Canada? But how come the Shumash, and there's only 200 and some of us left, how come we are not strong in our culture? And that again, to the Spaniards.
Took their culture from, in other words, too. That's the wrong that was done. We didn't let the people live the way they were used to living. That's why, to this day, a lot of the culture, it's gone from the, I see from this tribe, the Shumash. They didn't even let them keep their name until just lately they got the name Shumash. They were all called all mission Indians. I don't think a lot of them like that either, being classified as all mission Indian, for the simple reason that the Indians were mistreated. The missions were built in their blood.
There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of stories that they have about the evil that hit them. Now that the adobe house is all down, you don't find hardly any bricks. Used to be people in the nighttime, you know. They used to go through that road walking, going down to town. There's only one road going out of the reservation. They used to hear the people talking, people crying, people screaming, and you could hear, and sometimes they even heard drums, you know. You used to hear crying, you know, like somebody's weeping, and you only heard that, and there was nothing in there. Just from the people, I think, suffering that they did there before they died.
They lost their self-esteem, lost their culture. There's a lot of prejudice now. In fact, the Indians would have abortions. They would tell the women, we're not going to have no more babies because I don't want my child to work in conditions like that.
Abortion and infanticide, which had been used as a population check, emerged as a reaction to mission conditions. Wrote Governor Solon,
The Indian women are accustomed to abort very easily with seeds, herbs, and pills.
According to one Chumash man,
there is a town a little far away from here that was known to be a place where women could have their child what would you call abortion now, but in the any days it was bad medicine. So I can understand why, now that I didn't hear from my mother mentioning Indian culture to me. Now that I'm a man now, I understand that they probably decided that it's no place to bring a child in.
Because they saw the Indians neither cooperating nor surviving, the Padres often took out their frustrations with the whip, an action which furthered the misery and the distrust of the people in the missions. For example, not realizing that most stillbirths were caused by syphilis, the Padres would punish women with stillborn babies, suspecting that abortion had been committed. Writes Hugo Reed.
When a woman has the misfortune to bring forth a stillborn child, she was punished. The penalty inflicted was shaving the head, flogging for 15 subsequent days, iron on the feet for 3 months, and having to appear every Sunday in church on the steps of the altar with a hideous painted child in her arms.
Governor Pedro Fages would write,
Chastisement by putting into chains is very frequent in all the missions, and forced labor is resorted to.
Captain Grajera would write from San Diego.
The customary punishment imposed on the neophytes consists of 25 lashes, and a novenario of 25 lashes per day for 9 days.
Writes Hugo Reed of Mission San Gabriel.
Ask anyone who made this or did that, and the answer remains the same. El difunto Claudio, or the whip. So as not to make a revolting picture, I will bury acts of barbarity known to me through good authority by merely saying that Father Zalvidea must have considered whipping meat and drink to them, for they had it morning, noon, and night.
They had long whips, you know, that was so long so they can stand far and hit you, whip you with it. They were made out of hide, so they just tore your skins when they whipped you.
A Luiseno woman from Pala recalls.
When they got here to the Pala mission, that they chained them together by feet. They would say, hey, this is a good cook for this man, does this kind of work. Even if you don't like him, this is the way it went. You know, they hooked up together. If you didn't stay with them without being chained together, then you were to be chained together. That was to keep the mates together, and if they didn't like them, that was the way they did. Now, that's just what my grandfather told me. You know, that kept them from saying, hey, I'm going to go this way and run away. That way they were chained, they couldn't run away, you know. Unless they wanted to run away together, if they were happy together, they wouldn't want to be chained, right?
This testimony corresponds to that of Hugo Reed, who wrote,
On the breach between man and wife, they were fastened together by the leg until they agreed to live again in harmony.
Here is a sample list of how certain offenses were punished. Robbery at Carmel Mission, death. Bad character at Mission San Juan Bautista, 25 lashes. Fugitism from Mission San Fernando, 90 lashes. Failure to report fugitives for Mission San Juan Bautista, imprisonment and hard labor. Conducting medicine dances at Mission San Diego, 1 year imprisonment and 25 lashes. On his visit to Carmel Mission, the French Comte de Pérouse would write,
Being more a friend of human rights than a theologian, I confess that the condition of the Indians here differs scarcely at all from that of the Negroes of our own colonies.
Father Antonio de la Concepcion of Mission San Miguel accused his fellow priests of tyranny. After being removed to Spain as a braggart, Concepcion would make a number of accusations. On July 12, 1798, he wrote,
The neophytes are being treated in ways most cruel that history records. The slightest delinquencies being treated with shackles, stocks, and stripes.
The Spanish government investigated and found many of Concepcion's charges to be correct. Then mission president, Father Laswain, immediately responded.
The Indians are flogged, and wherefore not? It is evident that a nation which is barbarous, ferocious, and ignorant requires more frequent punishments than a nation which is cultured, educated, and of gentle and moderate customs.
The punishments inflicted in missions came as a shock to the California Indians, who had not previously used force as a means of discipline.
Even in my day, my mother never had to whip me. Hey, anytime she wanted to tell me something, and if I didn't do it, she had to just look at me. You didn't have to be spoken to.
In the end, rather than increasing respect for the Padres, the punishments inflicted in the missions would only increase fear, anger, and discontent among the Indian people. Many Indian people would flee from the missions. People from Santa Barbara would run to these hills in San Marcos Pass. Many Costanoans and Salinans would join the Yokuts on the shores of Lake Tulare in the Central Valley, described by Father Payeras as a republic of hell. The Padres would often complain,
"The Indians are losing respect for their father missionaries."
In 1816, a law was passed prohibiting Indians from riding horseback in order to prevent them from escaping.
A lot of them ran away because they didn't want to, on account of the way they were being treated.
After visiting numerous missions, Alfred Robinson would write,
"The condition of these Indians is miserable indeed, and it's not to be wondered at many attempt to escape. They are pursued and generally taken, and then they are flogged and an iron clog is fastened to their legs, serving as an additional punishment and a warning to others."
Well, if they were caught, then they were put to death. And this wasn't no easy way. It wasn't just to up and shot them and shoot them and forget about it. It was torture death. If they got an iron shackle on the fellow's leg, well, he can't go too far and he can't go too fast. So this gives him a good chance to catch up with him. And then the torture begins. Oh, they beat him, slap him, kick him, and maybe stake him to the stake out there in the sun. And these were the things that was told to me by my mother, just inhumanity.
They were hunted down until they were killed by the soldiers during the Spanish, when the Spanish people were here, or the Spaniards. The Indians were running away, just barely running from these people and hiding. But I think the majority of them did get caught, either brought back or either shot.
I also have my grandmother's father buried right at the Presidio. From what my grandmother told me, he got killed. I think he tried to escape. That's what she told me. There were a lot of them fighting, to get out of there. And a lot of them got killed and never came back here. And some of them were lucky to escape and came back. And they went up into the big rocks in the mountains and they got into the rocks and they couldn't get a hold of them.
After numerous problems with fugitism in the missions of Baja California, Father Palu would request that a garrison of soldiers be supplied each mission and that a suitable guard be stationed at each presidio. The Viceroy, Antonio Bucareli y Ursua, would respond,
"I
All right. So that is, dude, this is bugging. All right, everyone can finally unmute themselves. Start my video. So, put that up. So I wanted to get everyone's, I guess, view or opinion on the video. Please keep it brief. There's a lot of people, but definitely speak your mind. All right. So I'll just, I guess anyone just go for it. There's too many people to really have any kind of pattern. So who wants to chime in first? I guess, what do you think of the movie? Is it new? Is there new information? Do you disagree with some of it? Does it go against your, are you allowed to unmute yourself or do I have to do it? Okay, all right. I guess, I'll just pick people. All right, let's just do that. All right, all right, let's do, how about you, Martha? Wait. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So I was watching it, but I had to like take care of my baby too, as I was multitasking. But from everything I've seen, it's very, it's really hard for me to listen to some of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Very hard. Imagine watching it every year.
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, I don't. Sometimes I'm like, man, why did I? This isn't what I signed up for. No, I'm just joking. Okay, but anyways, all right, keep going. Who didn't I talk to? Yes, Sandra. I don't think I've heard you before. Hopefully you're there. Wait, I'm gonna unmute you. All right, you're ready to go. What do you think of the movie? And we have technical difficulties. All right, Kylie, you're next.
I mean, it is stuff I've heard before, but like it's also a lot of new stuff I'm hearing, and it's just as like it is really impactful in like my brain to see like or hear really real people talk about what has happened.
Yeah, I agree. The oral history part, it's all oral histories, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I dig it. I really like it. And our book will have a lot of oral histories too. So there's more to come in the reading. Fantastic. All right. Yeah, I agree. That's one of my main points I want to make is it's oral histories, and that's very important. Erica, go for it. Erica Pinto.
Hey, Ethan.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. I did hear some of those stories in the past. I actually, I live right down the road from Presidio Park, and I go there a lot because I heard the stories of my grandfather. I watch videos. My grandfather is Tony Pinto, and I know I have relatives buried there. And I actually heard about the story of one of the relatives, running away with a collar on him. And to me, when I picture that or I feel that when I go there, I just feel like, damn, these people were freaking stubborn and strong. And, nobody likes being told what to do. Nobody likes being, beat up and enslaved. And I just think that people are so resilient. Every time I think of that and I look at these Indian people, I always say this when I talk to Indian people, but all of the stuff that our Kumeyaay people, that Chumash people, all the Liseños, all the state of California people that they've been through the genocide, the mission, the gold rush, all these things were meant to destroy us. Our heads were on the line for, we're being paid, I guess, to be killed. And when I just see people, I'm amazed that, we're all still here. So that's what, when I see these stories, it reminds me of that. And I just feel a sense of gratitude and strength and resilience for those people to survive like that.
Yeah, it's incredible. And your grandfather, Tony Pinto, he's in this book. Did you know that?
I saw his picture I didn't know that he was in the book, but I saw his picture. I saw my Aunt Rosie.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it, but he's in here and we're reading it. So, yeah, that's awesome. I'm so happy to you're taking this course and you're going to read about what your grandpa said about the mission straight from your grandpa.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's a great book. And, this movie, this book, this is our history and no one, and it's one day everyone's going to know this, all our people, everyone from San Diego, this is the truth. And yes. Glad to have you. It was really cool. I want to hear more stories too. So I'm going to be calling on you a lot. Awesome. Right on, Erica. All right. So let's do Hector. I haven't talked to you yet. You were technical difficulties and you're back.
Yeah. Hi everyone. And yeah, sorry about last week.
Cool.
I'm Hector. I guess one thing that stood, of course, a lot of the violence discussed, was, pretty horrific. It is horrific. And, there's a lot to say about that. But one thing I was thinking about that's sort of relevant to today is understanding the part where they're talking about sort of the sustainability of the land and sustainability of food supply. Really reminded me of the fact that today we're still dealing with, these fires in California, and understanding that we haven't, settlers haven't understood that indigenous people had their science behind, the annual burns of the land. And so, of course, right now there's a lot of articles going on about, returning to the indigenous knowledge of how to take care of the land to be able to sustainably burn, the brush, etc. So that's something that was mentioned in the movie that really stood out to me that speaks to today.
Yeah, and the food thing is a big one. And I'll definitely go in depth in that, the food scenario, the land management and fire management. I'll say this though, the fire management wasn't really suppressed until later on, because one of the things about the mission period that is part of the mythology of it is the Spanish only had control of the coast. They didn't have, I live in El Cajon, so I would have been fine right now, right? So they didn't come past El Cajon, where I'm La Mesa, El Cajon area. So it's always overblown. So we were still burning well into the American period, and it was the Americans that suppressed our the fire science, right? And I can keep going. I'll just end on one 30-second bit. The reason why it is the way it is because the Europeans came here from a jungle, like Europe was a green area, and they took their fire science and applied it to the desert, us. And they don't do, I think 5% of CAL FIRE is actually controlled burn. And so they still don't learn from indigenous wisdom and indigenous knowledge. And that's why you have these fires every year, and it doesn't have to be that way if they were to learn from us. But we're stupid, right? So, but yeah. All right, awesome, Hector. Appreciate it, man. So, okay. So, all right, I'm trying to call on, I want to kind of hear everyone's voice. I talked to Miss Lisa. Amanda, did I talk to you? Okay, I want to hear your opinion on the movie, please.
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely heavy stuff. I think the part that stood out to me the most was the fact that they didn't listen. Kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, they didn't even regard them at all. No one bothered to even learn the language and hear their voices. And I know I have another book that one of the first stories they talked about is someone coming to find Manzanita, and someone stopped and talked to a Kumeyaay woman, and she was able to show them two more species. It was either Manzanita or yuccas that they didn't even know existed. So it's just emphasizes that they knew a lot about where they were and what was going on, a lot more than they were let to tell. So it's really sad how much got lost in that whole process. So
yeah, the food thing is so central. And they said that the average lifespan was 6 years in the mission.
Yeah, and didn't the Kumeyaay people save some of the missionaries because they were running out of food, and the Kumeyaay people brought them or were showing them food that they didn't even realize was food?
I haven't heard that, but I don't know. It's controversial. The other thing is too that I want to make with what you just stated is we need to learn Spanish. Kumeyaay, the next generation of Kumeyaay scholars needs to learn Spanish so we can go through these documents and translate them from our perspective. So that's why I don't know that answer, because I don't know how to read Spanish, and not enough of us have. There's only two people that have two Kumeyaay historians that have read Spanish. It's Iris Ingstring of USD and Richard Carrico, which we'll get to next week. And so we're missing, a lot of this information because of that, because we don't read Spanish. So there's just a lot of stuff I don't personally know. But it's out there. So yeah, and I definitely agree that we need more research on this stuff. All right, so Carol, did I call you next? I don't think I could see you or hear. Yeah, I couldn't see you last time. Okay, Carol.
Yes.
How are you today? How's everything?
I'm good. Fine, thank you. I was horrified by the violence. I'd heard about the slavery and knew some about it, but I had not heard about all the horrible violence, and I was really saddened by that. But you know, on a happier note, I have to tell you that I spent today on a Zoom, a Climate Science Alliance Zoom. I don't know if you know about that organization, a group, I think mainly from Scripps Institute of Oceanography. And almost every session had 2 or 3 Native Americans from this area who are totally into teaching sustainability from the Native American perspective. And it was incredibly well received, and it was a wonderful seminar. So I just wanted you to know that, you know, I've seen both sides today. It was very touching.
Yeah, I think it's a good time right now for change. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. It's always good to balance the bad with the good, right?
Yeah.
Right on, Carol. Thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome. All right. So, interesting. So who didn't I not? I feel like my computer's bugging today. I can't switch. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's Zoom. All right. So who haven't I think Jake. How about you, Jake? Did I talk to you yet last week?
Yes, sir. You talked to me.
Okay. Well, what do you think of the film anyway?
I thought it was really heavy and touching. To think about how they ruined the Chumash's culture, you know? Like, not only did it happen down here on Kumeyaay people, but it also happened to them, and they lost their language due to that. And their people were treated so terribly, and that's really, like, I don't know, it's crazy to hear, like, fresh out of high school, you know, learning our culture, but also hearing that women used to get treated for having stillbirth, of having the irons put under their feet, hot irons put under their feet. You know, that's really crazy to think about. Like, it I don't know, it's just really heavy on my heart, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you got to do something to get it out. Like, I play my guitar or do something, go on a run, because that negative energy, man, that's one thing about our people is, you know, you got to find a way to release it, you know? So, I mean, we use music, right? Our bird singers. So it's cultural. So just a word of advice, you know, when we're doing all this stuff, I think that's how I do it is I'll play my guitar, I'll do something, because you got to get that energy out, watch a comedy. I was just watching Dave Chappelle earlier, for instance, so it's really funny. But you gotta get it out, man. You gotta laugh, you gotta live again. But don't be afraid, you know, too many people, they go, oh, I don't watch the news anymore, it's too negative. Oh, I don't want to, you know, this history stuff's too negative. It's like, well, you know, you got to do it. You got to do it, and then get it out. You know what I mean? Get it out of your system and fight the good with the bad. But yeah, that's something I wish I would have learned earlier. Because after a while, dude, this stuff will get to you. You know, it's pretty tough stuff. But yeah, I'll probably say that a lot during the semester, because you can't let it affect you. You know, you got to stay positive, but you don't want to be naive, right? So that's the trick. All right, I want to hear. I feel like there's something going on with my screen. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me see. Is there a way I can let everyone unmute themselves? Yeah, this is not kosher. Anyways, I'll just stick with this group because I can't pan to the other side. All right. How about you, Carlene?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really hadn't heard a lot about the mission stories, but the last time I did a face-to-face with you, I told you about this man named Walter Rosales, and he told me a handful of stories that he had heard from his grandmother, great-grandmother, and she had to have been probably born maybe, I don't know, 1840, and she told him stories of, you know, trading children for coffee or sugar. And I know he's got a lot more, you know, history, because I think I heard Dave Elliott and just Rosie Peno share those stories that they recall. But I just wonder how many more of our people in this area, you know, have those stories to share.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Great question. And I mean, so I think Rosalie Robinson, she's in here. This is the Tony Pino, your grandfather is on page 139, Rosalie's stories. So we have a good amount of our oral histories actually down, which I was surprised, because I had to go like kind of find this stuff, and that's why I'm doing this class. It shouldn't have to be, this should find you, right? So like this book was in my dad's collection, and I'm like, what the hell is this? You know, and that DVD was at KCC, and I was poking around. They say, hey, have you seen this DVD before? And it'd be stuffed in a broom closet somewhere if I didn't. And so that's the main problem, is getting these stories out there, our oral histories. So it's a good segue. And what I wanted to say is this, is when I was in my undergraduate, well, when I first became a historian 20 years ago, I realized that our oral history is always downgraded to written history. And this is part of colonization. It's part of that civilization bullshit that we're handed, where written, educated documents are more truthful than stories passed on generations. And it's something that the European Americans have done to indigenous people to make them feel superior. And it plays into that, well, we're irrational thing, right? So we're not put on a level, and neither are oral history, which is why I did what I went out and I got oral histories as much as I could before it was too late. And what I did was I transcribed oral histories, like here, right? So now it's a written document. So sometimes as Native people, we have to play the rules of white society, of white institutions. We have to play by those rules. But within those, there's a freedom, and there's you know, sometimes you just got to play the damn game. And that's what I've been doing this whole time. Is when I went to USD, when I went over there, I learned how they wanted historians to be, and I said, well, how would Native people view history? How do we view oral history? On and on. So at the end of the day, I took what they had, but it's kind of like Picasso. Picasso wasn't a Picasso until he learned how to be a real painter. And I mean real, like realism and action. And then he went off and did his own thing. And that's how I kind of viewed my journey is, all right, I'm going to learn how you want me to be a painter. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go make my own style. I'm going to go do my own thing. And that's what Indian people have to do, is we have to make our history indigenous. We have to use our oral histories, and we got to play by their rules, whether we like it or not. It doesn't do any good to go out there and just say, screw the system. Sometimes you got to be a part of the system before you can change it. And so one thing I noticed with the oral history is it's just like, well, here's what they say, where are your sources, right? So say I'm going to write my thesis, right? I wrote, just let me give you an example. I'm a visual learner. So here's 100-page master's thesis, right? It was crazy. So imagine, so here's a bibliography in the back. So this is what you do when you go to graduate school. And you better have a big bibliography, or you ain't gonna be, they're gonna be like, what the hell, dude? There's like 10 sources in here. So I had 1, 2, 3 pages of bibliography, on and on, playing the game. Now imagine, the bibliography just said had my family members, right? had my, had your grandpa, Tony Pinto, Rosalie Pinto Robinson, Awea Pipe, you could have their name and their birth and all that. But at the end of the day, they would look at it and they would go, this isn't, you can't do that. And you wouldn't get your master's degree and you would be shamed, right? So again, there's that, to me, this is like that systematic racism part of the university system itself. It's rigged against the indigenous people and the indigenous historian. So they always have the controls. They already have the levers and the gears and all of that. And so we come in there and we just get grinded up and we get downgraded. And this is why mission history is where it is today, is because we have been, the system itself is broken, right? The education system itself to write history is broken. And that is the gist of it all. And I'll say one more thing, and then I want to hear more of what you're going to say. This won't change until at the grade school level it's taught. This stuff is taught to our children, to the grade school level. And if there's more on, I do more of this lecture at Grossmont if you want to take my Native American history perspective course. But I really go into detail on that. We got to get our kids, we got to get our textbooks right. And that's, it's too late when you wait till they're adults. They got to learn when they're young. And so elementary school level, 4th grade, that's the front lines of this war where we're at. And look to Germany if you don't think it can be done. They teach the Holocaust when you're young. So you grow up knowing about the Holocaust, the truth of it, and guess what? The kids grow up fine, right? So we gotta get this going, and we gotta push for it as a people. And I'll just say one more thing before I want to get everyone's more to talk. But they invited me to talk at USD for the Alumni Association. They're like, well, what do you want to talk about? I want to talk about why the Catholic Church won't apologize for the mission period. And that's so, and that's, look, I only live my life once. And if I get one opportunity, I'm going to take it. So that's what I want to know. And that's what I want to say. And I know I may get, it might be a little too heavy. People not like it, but we have to, when we get a moment to do something, we have to do it. And that's how change will happen. And we can't be weak and we can't be cowards for people to like us or for our career. Right. And that's how I always feel. I never did this for a career. I did this to tell the truth, and because I really care about my people and my ancestors. So at the end of the day, I still don't know what's going to happen, but I'll try to be nice. But I'm going to tell it like it is. So that's my alma mater, and here I come. You know what I mean? So here it'll be interesting. So all right, Luis, what do you think?
Well, actually, the one thing about the movie, I totally obviously agree with Hector and everybody said about the horrific tragedies that took place. But one of the ones that I've heard in other sources that I don't think they said here was the rape of all the women, the Indians. And that was rampant. And so that didn't even come up here. But and I'm also reading right now Benjamin Matley's American Genocide. And he talks in there, I forget who it was, a reporter, a visitor to the mission. So it wasn't a mission person, but a reporter. He talks about how they fed the Indians, and they literally just had troughs. And if they just put the food in, and the Indians had to use their hands to just sort of eat, like they were feeding them like the cattle. But the thing I think you just ended with was what I thought was the bookend, is that today still the Catholic Church will not acknowledge these atrocities. I was at San Diego Mission a couple years ago, and one of the women in the gift store was talking to another woman, so I realized she was one of the docents. So I waited a bit and I asked her afterwards, I said, oh, bring your docents with the kids. She was talking about, bring all your kids here, blah, blah, blah. And so I asked her, do you mention the treatment of the Native Americans? and in terms of some of the atrocities, the enforced work. And she said, no, the kids are too little. And I said, I don't think so. I was a teacher. They're not too little. And look what they're seeing on the news today. And finally she said, well, I do know about all that because I'm Native. And my grandmother told me, she said, but we can't teach the kids. And I was just kind of like, and this was coming from a Native. So.
Well, just next time someone says that, say, look at Germany.
Yeah, I like the way you said that. That was really good. I will.
Yeah, and here's why we're doing it. We're not doing it because we want to just cause trouble. I'm doing it because I don't want this to happen again. I want the world to change. I want religion to be accountable. I want those who are known for contrition to be contrite, right? And so all these things, it's like, and I want my beliefs to be real, and I want yours too. So I think, this accountability of, especially when it comes to religion, right? Like when someone's whipping you and teaching you about the love of God, I think there's a problem there, And so there's things that we can agree on, and that's the thing I want to say too with the Catholic Church, because they'll say, oh, no, that didn't happen. Oh, no. So what I think, what I'm going to try with my strategy is, okay, what can we agree on? And then debate that. Okay, yeah. Evangelization is one for me. What's the right way to evangelize? No one questions the core of the mission system itself, which is mission evangelization, right? And if you're a true evangelist, well, let's hang out there for a while, right? Let's just literally question the whole thing of that, because Native people, and we'll get into this much later with God is Red, we didn't believe in imposing our beliefs on each other. And the idea of freedom of religion came from us, Native people, not Europeans. So this whole idea of monotheism and, the thing about Christianity, man, where the Puritan religion was born, so was the Nazis, right? The Nazis came out of Germany, and that's exactly where Martin Luther began his journey. So if you're going to talk about Christianity being, it's the ultimate hypocrisy, right? And one thing Jesus warned about more than any, greed and money was number one. And I think number two was the Pharisees, right? Those in leadership, in religious power. To me, Jesus was like saying, hey, look out for those people, because that's as bad as it gets, right? When you're in those positions, when you're saying the love of God and you're whipping my great-great-great-grandfather, well, I got a problem with that, because that's not Christianity. And the other thing I want to say in this is a lot of Indians hate on Christianity. And I want to say I have this message for you, is that there's so many kinds of Christianity out there. It's not a monotheistic thing. It's not a monolith. Christianity has divided from day one. It's divided. They're called, cults and sects now, right? Now you have not sects, but SECTS. So you have, I know that's such a funny word to say, cults and sects, right? But no, it's sex. No, there's no way to say that without making a laugh, right? So if you're going to criticize Christianity, which my dad and I fought all the time, because I was like one of those Christians no one liked. I was like too into my church, you know what I mean? But my dad and I would get into it, and I wish I knew what to say, but I do now. Is that's a different kind of Christianity, right? The Spaniards that they brought, and the Christianity, if you're a Christian, is probably different, and on and on. So it's important to criticize that specific strand of Christianity, which is the conquistadors and all this stuff. So there's so much packed in, and I think my journey started with theology, right? I have all the tools and weapons to do this, and I think I'm ready to start a debate that other people maybe couldn't have because they weren't trained or taught. So my goal is going to be to attack the theology of the mission system itself, and that is of evangelization and using whips and all that forced labor. So there's so much, but you have to be real articulate with this stuff if you want to be effective. So I'm still kind of still kind of, you know, I'm still not comfortable in my own skin with this stuff, to be honest. If I'm honest, it's pretty uncomfortable. So I wanted to kind of, Rebecca, what do you think? You're back. Manzanita's back. They got broadband. What do you think, Mama Bear? Did you get to watch it?
Oh yeah, I watched the whole thing. Let me put my
Nice.
video
That's
on.
awesome.
Oh God. Obviously, it was very disturbing. I've heard a lot of these stories. I'm lucky enough to have had Leroy and our current chairwoman Angela tell me a lot about this. And when they did, they told it to me with passion and feeling. So if I cry, it's sorry. It really affects me. It always has. Even when I was a little girl, it really just, I couldn't believe that people existed like that ever, you know. And right now it upsets me, because it'd be one thing if I could say, like, okay, these people existed back then, they were ignorant, they didn't know what they were doing, but there's no people like that now, because everyone's educated and they know right from wrong, and that's completely wrong. And it just breaks my heart to see that the treatment that my people went through, not only are we still dealing with it, especially, you know, now that I work for my tribe full time and I go through grants, I see just how the federal government just wishes we just would group up somewhere and just die, so they wouldn't have to deal with this anymore. So it's still just, I mean, something as simple as our internet connectivity issues that maybe aren't anywhere else in town, but here, you know, we have issues for basic things. But just to see the hate that people have still for people of color, and just for each other, and then to see that it breaks my heart also to see that the young Native people perpetuating the racism, because now it's the other way. I hate white people. I hate all white people. Fuck them. And I've taught my kids, no, that is not, we're just taking what they gave us and we're turning it around and just saying that. So, you know, I try to tell them, you know, you just value people based on the people. You know, a lot of those, the good people will ask, well, that happened so many years ago. What can I do now to help Natives? And I get asked that all the time. And I always tell them that the best thing you can do is to be educated. That's it. If that's what you can do for my people, is please be educated. Wherever you are in the United States, know where you are, know whose land you're on. And make sure that you don't have to go find somebody out and just, you know, thank them for being there, although that would be nice. But just be aware, read up on it, read up on their culture, their history, and find out what's going on. That's how you can respect where you are and the people that were here. So yeah, this is obviously going to be kind of hard for me, this course, having to have it brought up. And I know that every time you talk about it, I think of a story that Angela and Leroy had told about, I forget the Padre's name, but I ordered the book that he wrote, and it was his observations, and he was appalled by the Spanish soldiers and how they would take our babies and smash them against the rocks to get the Kumeyaay men and women to obey them. Because, I mean, who wouldn't obey somebody when they just smashed your baby? And then they would have contests to see how many babies they could fit on the end of their swords. So, you know, like, those are the kind of things that, yeah, I mean, they're very disturbing, but like you've said, it's not any more disturbing than what happened in the Holocaust and how they were treated, and how many other indigenous and people of color have been treated all over the world. So I think we need to be educated. We need to educate other people. But I'm also not blind, and I have taught my children that, you know, I am a native of lighter color. And so therefore I do enjoy white privilege, whether I like it or not, which I don't, and I don't agree with it, but it is what I have. So I've had conversations with my chairwoman that she has been eyeballed. She's very beautiful, dark black hair, dark skin. She's been eyeballed shopping in places. They follow her around and look at her. And yet I could go in there and go shopping and they don't look twice at me. And so that has always filled me with a sense of disgust, and that I have always kind of been ashamed of my the white part of me. And so I'm hoping through all of these classes and learning history, I can learn to be proud of the Native part of me and not have to be ashamed of the white part of me.
Oh man, you came to the right class, Rebecca. Check it
Good.
out. So you and me are the same, and this is how you do it. So all that pride and love you have for your Native side, you do that for your other side, right? Whatever you are, you be proud of that, and learn about both your sides, right? So I lived in England for a while. I went studied at Oxford, and I'm equally proud of my white side as my Native side, and I have that for anyone, no matter what anyone is, because at the end of the day, not everyone's all bad. Not every race is all bad. You know what I mean? And so that's how you do it. Just love both of your sides. And I know you were taught like me to hate my white side. And I finally found myself when I started loving my whole self and didn't want to. My wife asked me a cool question. She goes, Ethan, do you wish you looked Native? Do you wish? And I told her, you know what? I wouldn't be who I am today if I looked how I wish I looked, right? I wish I looked like, straight up Native my whole life, because it was always a big deal that I didn't, right? So at the end of the day, and you can apply this no matter who you are, love your whole self equally, right? And don't let that racist bullshit make you hate yourself for one more day, and then teach your other people, and so and on and on and on. But it's going to be, you'll have days of regression, right? It's not easy, but start from there. And that's something it just came to me in an art project one day. And I made this piece and it was kind of corny, where it was a Native side and white side. And I said, look, I love both of my whole self now equally. And so, yeah, you're preaching to the choir there, Mama Bear. You could do it though. Trust me. It's the only way to be, trust me. Because there can't be a part of you that you don't like, you know what I mean? You just can't do it. And a house divided can't stand, but definitely you're in the right place. I appreciate it. Thanks for your honesty, Mama Bear. Awesome.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, so yeah, let's keep going around the clock. Kim, did you talk last? It's hard for me to I wish I could just do the unmute button.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I spoke last time.
Okay.
But I think this time I know a lot of the stories from what the natives were saying, but looking at the perspective from that Catholic priest, like I want to know, is he a modern day priest?
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of questioning him, knowing what we know about history, and I feel like he's kind of in a lot of denial.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if maybe, like you're saying, like he just doesn't know how to respond because that's his religion and people are going to criticize him. But it was just interesting hearing his perspective and the way that he felt that the natives were treated.
Yeah, I mean, if you were around, what is it, 2000, gosh, I can't even think of the word. 10 years ago, Father Sarah was canonized. He wasn't shot out of a cannon.
Yes.
He was actually, that's when they make him a saint. But that was crazy, right? And check this out. So I was right in the middle of that debate. My professor at USD was on the news telling why he's a saint. And then I look on the news and I see like my people from Viejas and all these other folks I know protesting, right? So I was literally in the middle of that debate. And so this guy, you would call him an apologist, right? A mission history apologist. So there's a bunch of them. There's a lot of them, and they're educated and they're in high places and they're actually my friends. So I think that's important. I think if someone disagrees with you, you should not be their friend. You should be able to. So I'm always been in this weird, I've always been given like both views, which, you know, one of the things that he said that my mentor said is that they taught us things, crafts, 50 in fact, right? So they taught us how to live in a modern world. So you're going to hear this. It's like the Republicans and the Democrats, right? They got a shtick, right? So you're going to hear one side and over here, and then there's not much in the middle. So hopefully that's what we're doing here, is not polarizing the conversation, but bringing in different viewpoints. So I've had a challenge before in the past doing that, but I'm still going to try. So I'll definitely bring in what they think about the mission period whenever I can, and how they defend it. So the higher ups in education, they defend the Spanish, their Spanish love. There's a word where you love the Spanish. Do you know the word? Does anyone know? Spanish ophile or something. But there's a bunch of them. And so, and that's who, you know, maybe that's who we have to convince. I don't know if you can ever, but we're going to have to fix that, or at least have a sit down with them. Okay, Ileana, you are on in 1, 2, and 3.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Cool. I don't think I heard you before, right?
No.
All right, cool.
My major is actually history, and pretty much from like the motive is always power and money behind anything, and the missions used religious conversion as an excuse to force natives into free labor, which is just slavery pretty much.
Yeah. The forced labor is a big one, huh?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the other thing that we can all agree on, even the Spanish, that they did forced labor. And then they just stopped, like, dude, like, let's talk about that. Like, they'll just literally have it in books too. Oh, and da-da-da, and forced labor. Okay, and moving on. You know, but no one realizes, like, dude, they call it carceral labor, but it's kind of a form of slavery. And our first chief, Ramon Ames, we have him on tape. Pat Curl was telling me they were translating the Kumeyaay to English, and Ramon Ames said he built the Padre Dam. If you go to Mission Trails down here, that Ramon Curl Ames, he said that they couldn't leave until it was done. So they had forced labor well up into, you know, not too long ago. They were doing it to us, and you couldn't leave. So, you know, say Christmas, you have not Christmas, but ceremonies or whatever, birthdays, blah, blah, blah. Like, a lot of things happen in 6 months, right, or a year. You can't do none of that. And Ramon Ames also said that the women would fashion the tiles on their thighs. So it's another, you know, we got to compile these oral histories, and the focus and the forced labor stuff, we'll definitely talk about next week a lot. So I don't want to go into that too much because it'll kill my lecture next week. So that next week is going to be awesome. We're going to show Richard Carrico and what he found at the mission on a dig in 1989. And that's going to be very, very awesome to go along with the book and all this, because we have really good evidence of forced labor and malnutrition. So don't miss next week if you can. If not, you can watch a recording. So there's a lot of cool stuff that I'm finally able to offer. So I'm real thankful for that. So, all right, did I talk to, okay, Jamie, you're on. Did I do Jamie already?
Hey guys. No,
Oh,
I
hey,
didn't talk yet.
Oh, cool. Yes.
Yeah. Well, in regards to the movie, I really wish that it would be shown in more places. It's really important information that a lot of people should watch. I did study history, and I know about a lot of that stuff, but I had to look that up myself. I didn't learn it in class or anything. So I think it's really important that more people get that information. And drawing parallels to my own heritage, you know, my grandmother and my mom are very Catholic, and when I ask about sort of the indigenous history, they don't know anything about it. And
you know, they just say there was nothing before that. There was nothing before the Spanish came. And I know that's not true, you know? So a lot of the stuff in regards to indigenous history and all of that, I mean, we have to figure that out ourselves. So it's, you know, it's important that people know that information, I think.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's the nothing before. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah.
That's new.
Well, in the Philippines, the Spanish were there for almost 400 years.
Oh.
So a lot of the time people don't really recall anything before that, you know, because it wasn't written, just like for the Kumeyaay.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I didn't think about that. You're Filipino, so it's the same story, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy people can attempt to even defend this stuff, right? It's just maddening.
Well, yeah, it's just so ingrained. The 85% of the Philippines is Catholic. So, you know.
Yeah, we're all assimilated. And the other thing too I want to make clear is the Spanish had a casta system. It was like the Indian caste system where you had the untouchables on the bottom and the Brahmins at the top. The casta system was very similar in the fact you had the Indios or Indians on the bottom and the Spanish-born Peninsulares on the top. And you had everyone in between. But the determining factor was Indians were on the bottom of the Spanish system, right? The casta system. So check that out if you want more. And the Spanish system, so when they say, and I heard this from my mentor and other people say, oh, but we wanted to, and you see that chart, it was a heathen, a neophyte, and then you become a Spanish citizen, right? So 1, 2, 3, and that's how they say they weren't like the Americans who just wanted to kill us. The Spanish wanted to eventually integrate us into Spanish society, but they never mentioned the casta system. So no matter how far we integrated into society, we're always in the bottom of the casta system, right? So we may be citizens now. We may have citizenship abilities, like, you know, if you think about Rome or whatever, how citizenship got you all this stuff non-citizens didn't get. But we would always have been on the bottom of the casta system. And so they never mentioned the racism, the intrinsic racism in the system itself. And they never mentioned the casta system. So I'm kind of giving everyone fuel to go out there and battle, you know, with these debates. So yeah, and then the main thing for me, like you hit on it, the nail on the head, is when the religion is like you're just walking into a landmine field, right? When you talk about religion, and now we're all Catholics in Verona, so I'm gonna unmute you again, Jamie. But we're all Catholics in Verona, and the first thing we did in Verona is build a mission. We're the Verona Band of Mission Indians. You know, we're Catholic to the core. So when you go to this stuff, it's like you're going to have resistance from the elders. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, and I think the new generation potentially won't have that resistance. So it might be just a waiting game until we can do it, because you always want to keep respect for your elders.
Of course.
And we go as a tribe, right? And we don't go it alone. So maybe the tribe's not ready because of the religion and the Catholicism, right? So
yeah, you should hear some of the debates my mom and I have. I always have to be respectful, of course, so I just kind of shut it down eventually. But you know, she is very, very, very Catholic.
But all I know is the Pope is definitely infallible. If you've seen the Borgias on Netflix, that's proof alone. The Pope is straight up infallible.
Yes.
Straight up. But yeah, here's the thing. I'm not Catholic, but I went to a Catholic school, so I studied Catholicism even though I didn't want to. So I dig it. And there's so many good things about Catholicism. It's not all bad, you know. And I think that's important to delineate when you're having these conversations. Just like, you know, I told Mama Bear, it's like there's a lot of good in everything, and everyone, and every race, and every religion. It wouldn't have been a religion if it wasn't good, right? I mean, love your neighbor is in all religions, even Islam, right? People who hate Muslims. Love your neighbor, the golden rule is in Islam. It wouldn't be a religion if it didn't have that. So it's important when you're talking about these debates in religion to keep an eye on the goodness of it and maybe where it went wrong, right? So I think, because people will just say, oh, you're just criticizing my religion, Catholicism. It's like, no, I'm actually criticizing this one moment in time. about this one person, about this one thing you did, right? So be real specific. Don't say Christianity. Don't say Catholicism. Say that specific moment, that specific thing. And that's what I was trying to say with evangelization. That's how I want to do it. I just want to talk about what you think about how to preach the gospel. Go on and spread the word, right? Acts of the Apostles. I'm just going to stay there for a while. And I don't want to go down the road of bashing our religion. I just want to do this one component. So that's kind of, I've thought a lot about this a lot, how I want to do it. And finally I get the opportunity at my school, and I'm very excited and very nervous, by the way. So I'm hoping, because in the end, you just want to be effective, right? You don't want to just be a jerk or say stuff. You want to change people's minds. And this, so it's very, very, very hard. Trust me. I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I'm willing to, if you have any idea, let me know. Let me know how to do it, please. All right, so I'm gonna take one more, and then we'll have enough time next week to talk about plenty of time, because it's just that article and stuff. So I'll take one more, and then we'll call it a night. Let's do 1, 2, 3. Luis, you're on. 1, 2, 3. Unmute. All right. Oh, he unmuted himself. Or he muted himself, I mean. All right, I'm gonna unmute you, so try not to touch anything.
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, what's up, Luis? Nice picture, man. You got a good smile.
Yeah.
All right, go for it.
All right, wait, what was the question? I'm sorry.
So I guess, what did you think about the movie, real general, like Rotten Tomatoes type review?
I mean, yeah, you're right. It was kind of old and everything, and like, I kind of, yeah. I mean, some of it is kind of like what I already know or what I've heard of. Like, I know that Native Americans are treated poorly and that we have been wronged, and it's kind of messed up. But to hear like more about how badly we were treated, it kind of like sucks, you know. And I don't know. There's like a lot of stuff to take in, and I don't know. I mean, it was cool, but yeah. I don't really have much to say. So
Yeah, well, you're not. So we really haven't gone to the material, the readings. I think that's when you really start to learn. So
yeah,
this is kind of just a kind of an introduction. But this book will be a great one. Next, make sure you do the reading tonight, or I mean for next week. You don't have to do it tonight, but I think you have a whole week to do it. Take a short quiz, and then we're gonna have a really cool discussion about the Mission Revolt. So the Kumeyays were known to be badasses and warriors amongst all California tribes. The Padres said it. You know, there's something about those damn Kumeyaay. They're just they're tough. You know, we don't just we want to do we resisted the mission more than almost any other group in California, and the Mission Revolt is an example of that. So, and here's the thing: a lot of our culture and language survived because of that resistance. So. Yes, our culture and language went out the door because of the missionaries, but the fact that we have anything at all is because we resisted the missionaries. So there's a lot to be proud of, and so make sure you do that reading, and you'll start to form your ideas and your opinions a little bit more.
All right,
so,
yeah.
Awesome, Luis. Glad you're here. I'm glad everyone's here. I really appreciate everyone joining me. The Zoom thing is hard for me, I'll tell you right now. It's been frustrating, but first week, 2's down. I think over time I'll get used to it. We'll all get comfortable in our own shoes. So thank you very much, everyone. And I'll be posting this on the Kumeyaay YouTube channel and on Canvas. So I'll see you next week. And it's going to be really, really a good one. So hope you're there. Thank you very much.